Welcome back, golfers, to another episode of the ABCs of the Golf Swing. Today, we're talking about the arms, specifically hands and wrists, how they function during the golf swing, and how you can use different grips throughout your game of golf to improve your scoring. Let's get to work. Okay, golfers, in this episode, we're talking about how the hands and the wrists work as a component of the arms. Hopefully you've been practicing the arm drills, and we're going to now talk about the hands and wrists, and then later on in another episode we'll talk about how all that gets blended in together. So first thing, hands. Your hands are just used to hold on to. That's it. That's all your hands actually do. Okay, we have different pressure points. I like to see pressure in what is called the claw of the hand, which is the thumb, pointer finger, and middle finger. This is our strength. If you try to squeeze too hard with the pinky finger and the ring finger, that's actually where the tendonitis comes in with golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. So we want to actually have the pressure and control right here in these fingers, the claw of the hand. So a good way of kind of understanding what the wrists do is you can think of a hammer. So if I have a hammer here, my buddy Jason Nall, Southern Junior Golf Tour, gave this to me. So, if you look at it and say, okay, I'm going to just take a hammer and hammer. Okay. So in this case, the wrists are hinging. And how the wrists hinge, we actually can think of it as four different directions. Okay. We can call this up and down. This is actually deviation, ulnar and radial deviation. And we can call it side to side, which is extension to flexion. So obviously they work in different directions. So as the trail wrist, for me right-handed, goes into extension, this lead wrist, left wrist, can go into flexion. So in the golf swing, we actually want the hammering motion not to be vertical, because obviously driving a ball down in the ground is not going to produce a good shot. We actually need it to be on this inclined plane this way. So when we take a look, the wrists have different functions in the golf swing. Your trail wrist is predominantly, again, we say predominantly because it's not an absolute, it's predominantly an extension to flexion type of motion. Your lead wrist is predominantly a deviation, radial and ulnar deviation, or up and down, hinging up, hinging down. So it's that combination of extension and deviation, or hinging up, that produces that speed, or transfers the speed. It does produce some of the speed too. It does help take the speed that we give it, apply it to the club head and into the ball. Without this wrist hinging, extension to flexion, we would not have the speed in the golf swing that all the best players in the world have and the long drive guys have. If we try to just swing this way and it's more of an up and down, we're not going to create as much speed as we can add when we add it here. And again, working this way only gives us so much. We need a little bit of that up and down. So realize that the wrists have roles to do. And your grip alignment then can either, enhance that motion or inhibit that motion. So for an example, if we get too strong of a grip where all of a sudden that lead wrist becomes too much turned over, now it starts acting on a sideways motion, which does work in some cases. So you have some golfers that have a very strong grip. They have won millions of dollars on tour, so it's doable. Okay, but then their hands have to match up, and that's the biggest thing. Is you want a grip that matches up to what you're trying to do. So if you have a real weak grip where the thumb's more on top, and we'll do some close-ups on this, then all of a sudden that right hand has to play a different role. Okay, because that's definitely going to be a little bit more of a lateral, and we're actually going to see a little bit more of some deviation in that also. So I like to get into a neutral position. So let's look at what a neutral wrist and grip position is, and we'll talk about some different grip styles. So the simplest way for me to find it is actually up here. If I'm hammering this way, where do I put my trail hand? How do I position that? where I feel like I have absolute control right here. And that's just something to feel. And you have to find yours. Next is then I just bring in that lead hand to give me balance right here, which is real easy. If I get too weak, that's stressful here. If I get too strong, I actually start working it on an angle. I want to maximize my deviation or hinging up and down, and that now becomes my grip alignment. The easiest way, I think, for me to describe grip styles is just to show it to you. So these are very basic, but I want you to realize, just maybe there's some new grips that you haven't tried that you can get into. So obviously, I'm a right-handed golfer, so this is my overlapping grip. I've seen people put it here, played around with some of this, but I like to give these fingers right here the control. And so I want to make sure they're on. Now, I've also used in some of my previous videos a reverse overlap. So what is that reverse overlap? Well, that's where the pointer finger of the lead hand, my left hand, is actually overlaying here on my right hand. Now, I've found this very effective for the short game, and I highly recommend you give this to a try. I know some people have used this for putting. Around the green, this is phenomenal. I really feel comfortable with this, and actually from about 100 and so yards out, I will use this grip, and what this really does is really get that right hand in a position for me to have good control, okay? So that reverse overlap is a good way of going. Now, if you like the interlock, go with the interlock. A lot depends on your hand size, and you can play around with that. You don't have to go in deep. You can get a little bit more in the fingers. And that's the biggest thing, is you have to find out what feels best for you and experiment with it. And experiment with different alignments. Hey golfers, thanks for watching. Next couple episodes, we'll combine how the arm swing and the wrist really work in the golf swing in order to control that club face. So stay tuned, and thanks for subscribing, and we'll talk to you later.